In this video, we're going to be looking at something called the Readable Bible. This was sent to me by the creators of this Bible, this edition, and you see the one that I've been sent is a paperback. I think that's all they have. They do have them, I think, broken down into different books of the Bible, but they gave me all of the books of the Bible in one volume. And what it says here on the front is it's in today's language and modern formats, and thus it's called the Readable Bible. The idea of this was that they wanted to take the Bible and just make it a lot more accessible, easy to digest all the information of the Bible as you're reading through it. And so they've reformatted the Bible in ways that are going to be conducive to modern readers. And something that they point out is that we might have a hard time with the idea of the Bible being formatted in a different way, but even things like verse numbers were modifications of the original writings of the scripture. They didn't originally have verse numbers. So we've already done formatting things in our Bibles. This is just kind of taking it to another level for readability. The back here tells you a little bit about this. It says it's a reliable translation, primarily a word-for-word translation that presents the text in modern formats and translates it as we speak today. Whenever a thought-for-thought translation is presented, the word-for-word translation is footnoted. So in looking at this, I would actually say it reads as kind of a hybrid of the NIV, NASB kind of Bible translation, but I would say it's a mediating translation overall as I read it. Not necessarily highly word for word, but as it says here, they do give footnotes if they're not giving a more word for word translation. So that's the idea behind the translation itself. It does read a lot like other translations that are out there, so it's nothing unusual. I'd love to know what the translation process was, because clearly it seems like they're borrowing from existing translations, but I'd love to know how they went about that. I'll try to show that as we go through the Bible here, but it also says here, instead of plain text, you have genealogies shown as family trees. Census numbers are in tables. Old Testament law is organized in outline format. Building designs are shown in easy-to-read tables. Lists and callouts made key concepts jump off the page, or they make key concepts jumped off the page. Cascading text simplifies long passages. Maps and tables keyed to the text help you visualize what happened. And at the end of the video, I'll just share a couple of things that I think a Bible like this would be really good for. But that's the basic idea. Let's take a look at this. It is just a paperback, simple volume. You have some cardstock pages at the beginning. The binding on it is glued binding here, and I'm not sure. I don't think it's sewn. It's really hard to tell, though. But I do see signatures. So maybe someone with some inside knowledge could let me know, and if the publisher ends up letting me know, because I probably should have asked that before, then I will put that in a comment and pin the comment on this video. So, but that's the construction that you see there. And as you get into it, you have the title page, and this shows you some other volumes that are available. It is available as a complete Bible, in portions, in individual books as below, and as a 27 volume set. So really interesting, some of the options that you have there. It says it's translated and edited by these two people. So the translation process, again, I don't know really the details of it, but those are the people that were involved in it. It'd be interesting to hear more of the particulars of that. Here's the copyright 2022. This is the second printing, printed in China, 2023. And here's the contents page, or pages. And then they do have a preface, gives a little explanation of this, the background to this Readable Bible concept by the creator. and has a before you read section, and then you get into the Bible text itself. So just looking right here, you kind of see some of the formatting they did right in the creation narrative. You have the days broken down very clearly here: day 1, day 2, day 3, and so on. You have footnotes at the bottom of the page. You have nice leading between the lines. It is readable also in terms of its printing. I'd say it's about a 10-point font. I'm not sure about that, but I'd say that's somewhere around a 9.5 maybe to maybe 10, but maybe 9.5 is a better guess. But with that good leading, space between the lines, it's really quite easy to read for most people. I like seeing all these footnotes at the bottom here. I haven't really read through this translation, so I'm just giving some preliminary thoughts based on what I've seen. And as I said, I think it reads kind of as a mediating translation, somewhat like the NIV, but in some ways like the NASB in terms of italicized words for supplied words, I think you'll see here, and capitalization of deity pronouns, I believe. But you see a lot of literally here in the footnotes, which reminds me of the NASB as well. But to me, it reads overall, and even in its gender language, and I'll try to show that, it reads a little bit more like the NIV. Here's just an example of when you're reading genealogies. A lot of people get bogged down with those. Now you have it broken down into like a family tree here. So that's just, one example of how they're taking, and what they've done here, they've not just added it to the Bible text, they've really made it part of the Bible itself. So you see here, years of the patriarchs. This is Genesis 5, 3 through 32, Genesis 11, 10 through 32, and they give you all the breakdown there of the chapters and verses, but then the information that's there. Here you have the lifespans of the patriarchs, all broken down into a nice chart, very visually easy to understand. So all of that normally in a Bible would be in just a sentence format, and it's really, a lot of people kind of miss the trees through the forest. I'm not sure how that expression should be, but you get the idea that they really get lost in the details. So this really helps with all of that. And then, for a lot of the narrative, it's going to be similar to a lot of other Bibles that you see today, but it is a single column format, so that helps it read really nice. And you have maps in places, so that's helpful. And when you get to the law, here's an example. This is really going to be talking about the articles for the tabernacle and its the worship at the tabernacle. And you can see here they've broken this down into charts, and there's an illustration of the tabernacle. But again, they do have the verse numbers that are being referenced so that you know where you're at in the Bible. But as far as laws, here's law code in the book of Exodus. And you can see how they've formatted that in such a way. I mean, you even have a contents page here for the book of the covenant from Exodus 20, 22 to 23:19. So really interesting. I think going to be helpful to a lot of people. Let's look at some other features here. When you're in Chronicles, that's a good one to look at. Some of these lists of people and certainly genealogies, all that sort of thing. You're going to have that in more of a chart format. I think if we get back to the beginning of Chronicles, you'll see here just listed out tribes of Israel, people that are being listed out in different ways. It's just easier to see the information that's being given. But here's a genealogy at the beginning of Chronicles. And again, people tend to get really bogged down with these. So that's, it's very readable if you're just trying to grasp the information more at a glance. After Chronicles, this gives you an example of letters. So you have Cyrus, king of Persia, the end of Chronicles, beginning of Ezra. So that's really interesting, just seeing a letter there, a proclamation with this kind of like a paper in the background, and then the letter is on it. And again, things are going to be in more chart format when you're getting numbers of people from different places. Psalms, it's actually more typical of what you see because Psalms is already formatted a lot of times with stanza setting, and so that is going to be similar to what you see in other Bibles. But that is an update from something like the King James Version or the Geneva Bible, which just had regular verse-by-verse format. Let's keep going here and just kind of leaf through, see some other things that pop out. Locations in Psalms. You have a map here. All right. And then end of Ezekiel. You have more charts here, and prophecy of the temple. I think that's where we're at here. Tribal land assignments. Yeah, and I think I even see, city gates here. All right, so that's the Old Testament. Let's get into the New Testament now. So the Gospel of Matthew comes right after the title page for the New Testament, and you have Jesus' childhood. There's a genealogy listed out in this format. I will say even narrative sections have, from what I can tell, a lot of times like an outline form. So even as you're reading narratives, you're kind of seeing how they broke it down point by point with the A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But they still do have the chapter numbers there, just so you can reference exactly where you're at in the Bible. Verse numbers are still there. So that is beginning. It is black letter text for the words of Christ. You'll see here that they do have italicized words, as I said, for supplied words. I also want to see what they did with pronouns for deity. Okay, so I was actually wrong about pronouns for deity. It looks like Jesus here being referenced, they don't have a capitalized H. So that is different than the NASB. It's more like the NIV in that way. So like I said, it's really this hybrid in terms of their choices between the NIV and the NASB. That's how I would characterize this. But the big thing here is how it's formatted. And you can see a lot of the Bible, especially those things people really get hung up with, and it's just hard for them to read the Bible. Those are the things they've reformatted with charts and family trees and that sort of thing. But narrative section, it's a lot like what we're used to in Bibles. And but you see here, just some kind of, with Paul's writings, sometimes he's listing out things. And so they just did that in list format, make that a little bit easier to see. So let's get to the end here, and then I'll talk about what I think this could be really useful for. At the end here, we've got the book of Revelation with, again, some reformatting there. And after the book of Revelation, you have a glossary with some different words that are defined. And then after the glossary, you have non-literal words and phrases not footnoted. So that's interesting that they put that in there. And then you have weights and measures, and the Jewish calendar, Jewish day, key to genealogical tables, the Herod family, festivals of the Lord, map notes, note on quotations of Old Testament scripture, translation notes, format and presentation notes, and then you have a note on spurious text, and finally some note pages, and not a whole lot of them, but there are some note pages there. And then that cardstock, similar to what you saw on the front, and that's it. So what is this good for? I would say, I just had someone telling me, my daughter said her friend wanted to read through the Bible. My daughter, too, is making an effort to read through the Bible. And, it's those Old Testament books that they were getting bogged down with. And that would be really good for anybody just trying to read through the Bible, especially early in their Bible reading experience. This is a great way to get through the Bible and help you just process the information more easily without getting overwhelmed. The other use that I see for this would be in more of a learning setting, a teaching setting, such as a Christian school or a Christian college. You want to do a survey of the Old Testament or a survey of the New Testament. To me, this would be a great textbook, and I don't mean to say that we should just treat the Bible like a textbook in some sort of a purely academic sense. However, again, there is information in the Bible. We want to process that. And so when you're in that kind of a setting, it could be really good for teaching purposes, for surveying and really grasping some of these types of writing and the information that is being presented, and just really helps students to get it a little bit more easily. And the fact that it has the chapters and verse numbers throughout really still makes it something that can be used alongside of other Bibles, and you can just know where you're at and write references down and so on. So I'm really impressed with this overall. I didn't know anything about it when they wrote to me about it, but I thank them so much for sending me this as a copy for review. I'd love to hear in the comments section, what does the audience think about this? Are there any things here that you're impressed with, that you like? Anything about this you don't like so much, or that you think could be changed for the better? It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts. But to me, with everything that's out there, this is kind of a complement, a contrast to other things that are out there. We have lots of text Bibles, which I'm highly in favor of, but for academic purposes, for teaching, and for people that just need to read through the Bible and get through it, I think this is a really good potential tool. So that's a look at the Readable Bible in today's language and modern formats. Thank you so much for taking a look at this with me from a fresh perspective.